is Omar. I am Majid. We are the substitutes, and today we are Gunan. Ebony Ivory, tall, thin, English foreign, extrovert, introvert, visionary finesse versus dinking dunking, expectations, goals, assists, beautiful championship football. Ian Wright and Dennis Bergkamp at first glance are starkly different, yet they're very much alike. Omar, let's get into it. Talk to me about this pairing. Talk to me about the impact they had on Arsenal Football Club.
Well, for a long time, Ian Wright was the leading goal scorer at Arsenal, and he was part of the old guard as well. When Dennis Bergkamp came in, he added something very different to the club. He added finesse, beauty to the game. Wright was part of that old guard, which is a little boring. And Bergkamp brought in something a little bit new, a little bit of flair. So I think they complemented each other quite well, with Wright being very, very fast and also a very intelligent player. And Bergkamp with his creativity, with his just deft touches and passing, just made that Arsenal team tick. It was the right time for them to come together.
Ian Wright, he played for the boring Arsenal team, but he was still effective back then.
Sure.
And then sort of when Bergkamp came into Arsenal, after meeting at a petrol station, they really seemed to hit it off. And Bergkamp, it's almost like, you know, he played second fiddle very voluntarily, in a good way, to Ian Wright when they joined forces. What do you say about that?
Well, I think that's kind of the nature of that number 10 role. When Bergkamp was asked to do, like, they started he was brought in before Wenger, but it was almost like a Wenger signing. And what he asked Bergkamp to do was just play that role, link midfield and attack in such a deft way. And Bergkamp had the freedom to do that. Like, he had a very good base behind him, very solid defense as well. Then Vieira was signed. So, like, he had the ability to make something happen. And that just allowed Ian Wright to make runs in behind the channel. He would run at defenders, or he would run in behind defenders. And more often than not, Bergkamp would be able to pick him out. And I think that just, like...
Yeah.
At Bergkamp, it just looked, he was happy playing that role. This is what he wanted to do. It was like he was born to play this role. And I think he enjoyed it rather than being looked at playing second fiddle. That's just my personal opinion.
And I'd actually love to, bouncing off that, I'd love to ask Dennis Bergkamp, does he prefer scoring goals or having an assist? Because he seemed to be more than happy to do either or. And that's a rarity for someone with his skill set. If you go back and watch the tape, he's amazing. He sort of got it all. And it's just sort of interesting to see that he went from the top guy. He was supposed to be the top guy at Inter Milan. And he sort of came into a, secondary role at Arsenal. Fit like a glove and was happy. Both players were very happy and fed off each other.
And like his goals, 110 goals and 404 appearances and 90 assists. So it was almost a 1-to-1 ratio. Whereas Ian Wright, was 185 goals. His assists in the Premier League were 22. So Ian Wright was born to be a goal scorer. Whereas Dennis Bergkamp, when he came in, I think he just loved playing football. He loved having an impact on the game, whether it be a goal or assist. And this is a guy who could score a hat-trick as well. And they'd score incredible hat-tricks as well. Like, his touches were incredible. So I think the guy was just born to play football. Goals or assists, it doesn't matter. He wants an impact on the game.
So now let's talk about using FIFA attributes. Let's talk about them as individuals. Talk to me about the pace, the power, and the shooting ability for both Ian Wright and Dennis Bergkamp.
So in terms of pace, Ian Wright was very rapid. Like, he would run at defenders, or he would run in behind defenders to score goals. A telling example, I believe it was his goal against Everton, that was ranked as his best goals. He was running at defenders, trickery, hitting the ball up, and then just lobbing the goalkeeper. And, I mean, he was a very, very fast player. Power-wise, he looked a little bit on the skinny side, but I think his pace made up for a lot of things. Like, he would just run in behind players, take his
Well, in terms in terms of power, I just want to add, he came from a Premier League that did not believe in the gym.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
pub was
yeah,
the
yeah.
gym.
But yeah, that's
Having
true.
a couple
Actually,
fans at halftime
that's
was the
very
gym.
true.
So it
That's
was
very
like,
true.
yeah.
But like you could tell, like his intelligence in his movement, his intelligence in his finishing, he had variety of shooting as well. That really helped make up for the lack of power. Whereas Dennis Bergkamp in that number 10 role, he was a very tall person and, you know, surprisingly very quick in his early days. He didn't look it. I kind of came in at the tail end of his career where he was a little bit slower and just a little bit more flair. But he was actually very quick in his early days. In terms of power, yeah, like he could knock you off the ball. Like he was a very, very powerful number 10. In terms of shooting, this one is quite interesting because, like I mentioned, Ian Wright, you saw his finishes, Majid. Like, which one? You saw the variety of his finishes. They were quite incredible. Like he would lob. I lost count of how many chips and lobs I saw. He didn't just go for power like in his finishing.
Well, this is what I was waiting for. Excuse me, 1 second. I'll tell you now. I'm gonna. This is what I was waiting for. I feel like his chipping, Ian Wright's chipping ability, needs to be a thing. It needs to be discussed. It needs to be sort of the benchmark for, yo, he can chip like righty. Do you get what I mean by
Yeah,
this?
like it's the way he would do it. He's just standing sometimes and just like a little bit of movement, and then as he looks up, oh, okay, chip. Like it was just so fast. Like
every angle possible too, and left and right footed. It's so, like from all over the place. When you watch the replays, you don't know which way, the goalie doesn't know which way the chip is coming. Often you'll see in those chip goals, the goalie has not moved an inch, and that's pretty remarkable when you're chipping it, because you do have that much more time to sort of at least, if you remember David Seaman against Brazil, like you do at least have some movement you can make. A lot of Ian Wright goals are just random like shots, almost dinking and dunking.
I agree with you. Like Wright was, I think that speaks to his instinct and intelligence. Like he just knew he knew where the keeper was, and the moment he looked up, the picture in his head was very clear, and he knew what to do very quickly. And I think, by the way, that's a very Bergkamp trait as well, because you saw some of his goals. I think his hat-trick against Leicester. You should watch his first goal. You should watch his last goal as well to complete the hat-trick. All beautiful goals. Yeah. But I think the standout... He was a good finisher in a number 10 role, by the way. Like, he was a phenomenal finisher. And I just want to shout out before we move on. Shooting, he was fantastic. He could score all types of goals. The standout one was the one against Newcastle. And you know the one I'm talking about? The one where he flicked it past a defender.
Physics.
He went one way, the ball went the other way, and it's just kind of sandwiched the defender. And then you have to watch this goal. It's beautiful. Both of them.
He flips it. He flips the defender. He flips the ball one way. He flips the defender the other way. Physically, he meets the ball halfway through, and then he takes it in nicely in the back of the net.
It's a beautiful goal. So
it's artwork. So it's artwork. It's artwork.
Yeah, it was artistry, and that's. I mean, look, when you get right down to it, I think Bergkamp has a little bit of an edge in terms of power. Pace, I think Righty was just always a little bit faster. And in terms of shooting, I think it's because of the position. I think it's because Wright was an out-and-out goal scorer and Bergkamp was a number 10. You'd kind of give it to Wright, but again, I just say look at the position. Now, I want to pass it back to you in terms of passing and dribbling. Now, I already know what you're going to say, but like, what have you got? Like, what do you think about this one?
Well, I actually think Ian Wright is a very underrated dribbler. In terms of the body control, he can take a low ball high and a high ball low like it's no problem. Yeah. He did that in that Everton goal. He sort of once, twice, and then he sort of takes the chip in. So, like, I actually think going back and watching the tape, I was very impressed with Ian Wright's ability to control the ball both low and high and everything in the middle. Dennis Bergkamp is a legend when it comes to dribbling and passing. Like, the guy's like Dutch Zidane, right? Yeah. Like, in his own way. But Wright, I don't know about his passing as much. I haven't seen his right pass too much.
Well, I think because you're right. Like Wright only had 22 assists in the Premier League. I couldn't get his stats pre-Premier League, but I think that's because he was an out-and-out goal scorer.
Well, that's the thing with him. You put him in the box with the ball, he'll chip it or shoot it. He'll get it in the back of the net.
Yeah, it will go in one way or another. He'll put it in the back of the net. In terms of passing, you know, Bergkamp has got his thing. Like he could mix the two really well. I just want to point out before I ask you what you think is a little bit better in terms of dribbling. Not ask you, I just want to say, do you know Thierry Henry called him the best player he's ever played with? And by the way, that list includes the
after the freaks, he mentioned, I've seen this video, it's after, he says, after the freaks, Zidane, Ronaldinho, and Messi, who I played with all three of them, Henry, after those guys, the normal human being who is the best would be Dennis Bergkamp for me. And that's the highest praise you can ever get. Like, I don't know, like, Zidane's, Henry's normal is our freak level.
Pretty much, yeah. In terms of dribbling, okay, so passing, we think that Bergkamp has definitely got it, just simply because of the artistry of his passing. But what do you think about dribbling? You said it's a little bit of a tight contest there.
Well, again, the thing with Bergkamp, because he has so much more field to play with, just based off of his position, there's that much more body of work about his dribbling, so I would give it to Bergkamp. But that does not mean, I think Wrighty, going back and watching the tape, I think Ian Wright is one of the most underrated strikers in the EPL. I really do mean this. I think his later TV commentary and just his wonderful, intelligent, emotional human being that he is has overshadowed the player how good a player he was.
Ruthless. Really. Very, very ruthless footballer in terms of his finishing.
A scorer. He scores. His job is to score, and he did it shockingly well.
So who would you have in your team? Who would you want? Would you want a Wright or would you want a Bergkamp in your team? I know they're inherently different positions, but who would you want?
Well, they're inherently different, but Bergkamp did play, like, Bergkamp is sort of the Dutch army knife, right? He's beautifully balanced, he did everything well. And like you said, he's the ultimate team player, right? He did span generations. So did Wrighty. Like, we talked about, like, Wrighty started with the old George Graham boring Arsenal, and then he moved into the new Arsene Wenger, you know, pre-Barcelona Arsenal. But if I had to pick one, I would go with Bergkamp, but that's just because of the positional flexibility. That's all. And I think Ian Wright, I like my center forwards taller. I like crossing the ball, and I'm very old school. I like Drogba style big guys who can head the ball. Wrighty in that way had a little bit of a disadvantage. No fault of his.
I think you already know me, Majid. You already know I'm gonna go for Bergkamp, but that has nothing against Ian Wright. I love the guy. I love his commentary. I love his insights. But Bergkamp was just, I love flair. I love players who play the game, and the guy was an artist. Even watching him and hating Arsenal growing up, you'd always look at Bergkamp and go, that guy is just. I'll round it off like this. He's the best number 10 that I've ever seen. And you can let us know in the comments below what you think of that, because I can already feel the hate coming. But you've got to watch. You have to watch this guy. He's beautiful. So for me, Bergkamp, he had everything, and you could just love him.
Yeah. We're unanimous with Bergkamp. I just want to tell the entire internet, please, YouTube, Ian Wright gets a big shock. It's a beautiful video. And it's like, Ian Wright, you're magnificent, you're a legend. Dennis Bergkamp, you're equally magnificent, you're equally a legend. We would go with Bergkamp just because there's a little bit more flexibility. What do you guys think? Ian Wright, Dennis Bergkamp, who's the bigger Arsenal legend? Who's better? Whatever you guys, however you want to frame it. If you were a coach and there was one player you had to pick between Ian Wright, Dennis Bergkamp, who would it be? Let us know. Like, subscribe, comment, do all of that good stuff. We will see you next time on The Substitutes. Peace out.